Welcome to the Aligned Ambition Show, where we share women's entrepreneurial wisdom. Are you a woman starting or growing your online heart-centered business? Are you wanting to do things differently? Do you feel icky about using manipulative marketing tactics and are ready to align your business with your ethics, values, and life goals? If this sounds like you, then stick around for this conversation.
We're the dreamers, the believers, breaking through the mold, building up our visions with a purpose brave and bold.
All right. Well, welcome to the Aligned Ambition Show. I'm your host, Larissa Russell of Heart Centered Academy. And today I have with me Sheryl Green. Sheryl has taken people pleasing to Olympic levels. I have to say, I understand that one. And for decades, she put everyone else's needs above her own until she hit a metaphorical brick wall. After committing to one too many responsibilities, Sheryl discovered the importance of boundaries. Okay, she actually discovered that boundaries were even a thing. Also understand that one. And now she is the how to say no expert, which I think is going to be amazing, working with individuals and organizations to establish healthy boundaries to improve relationships, communication, and well-being. Sheryl has a master's degree in forensic psychology and is the author of 7 books. So welcome, Sheryl.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I am excited to have you. These are the conversations I have all the time in my mastermind, in my community. It's about boundary setting and it's about saying no and, all of those things. So I think we're going to have a great discussion. But before we jump into that, can you tell us a little bit more about you and what was the catalyst for your change? Yeah.
So 40 plus years of people pleasing would be the background in a nutshell. Raised to be everything to everyone, and raised to be the caretaker for everyone. And the catalyst was a little bit after COVID. I had a content writing business, and I was starting my speaking career, and COVID hit. Overnight, literally my business just went away. All of my clients, put me on hold or canceled entirely. And it was one of those like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do, to keep a roof over my head moments. And I had been working, volunteering, serving on the board with an animal rescue for, 8-9 years at that point. And I had the opportunity to go full time. And I was like, this is amazing. This is great. Exactly what I need. Speaking career on the back burner, content writing. I was like, I'll get to it when they come back. And I worked there for probably over a year before my clients had started coming back. So I was working these crazy hours at the rescue. Like nonprofit work is not an 8-hour day. It's a 10 to 12, 14-hour day. And then I had my client work in the evenings. My parents were getting older and they were needing more of my time. I'm still volunteering. I'm still there for all my friends, doing all the things. And I just broke. I started crying constantly, which I always have to preface this with, I cry a lot on a normal basis. But this was like, I couldn't get a sentence out of my mouth without tears. And I started being really short with people. And I started feeling resentful of people that I cared about and that I loved. And one day I was driving down the road and I saw oncoming headlights and thought I could just cross over the median and this would all be done. So I didn't, thankfully. Pulled over to the side of the road and gathered my thoughts and my emotions and vowed that something had to change in my life. So I cleared my schedule, cleared my plate, only non-essentials on there. And I was doing good, focusing on my mental health. And then all the responsibilities came back and they brought friends and my plate was full again. And that was when I realized that my problem was boundaries or a complete lack thereof. And I figured I wasn't the only one that had this issue. So maybe I could take other people on the journey with me as I learned it.
Yeah. It's such an important one, right? Because as women, we're taught to put everyone before ourselves.
Yes.
Right from birth, this is the thing. We take care of everybody else before we take care of ourselves.
Yeah.
And our culture is all about produce, produce, produce. So if we're doing something that's not producing, we feel like we have to do more to make sure that we're producing more.
Yep.
And it just compounds until, yeah, something breaks, literally breaks. Yes, I've been there. I've absolutely been there. And it is devastating, but also freeing.
Oh yeah.
Right? There's that freedom that comes. There's that freedom from falling apart. And then you can just like walk away from everything and then build your strength back up again. But
Yeah.
hopefully we can help people get to that point beforehand so that we don't have to all break before we do something about it.
Yeah.
With that in mind, what is like maybe the number one tip that you give to women or anyone, but women is who I deal with. So yeah,
it's permission. And I think a lot of us, especially women, have been brought up to believe that we don't get to put ourselves first. We don't get to say no. We don't get to stand up or speak up. We don't get to set healthy boundaries because we're not actually here for us. And, it sounds silly to get permission from a stranger that you've never met before, but you have permission now. So if you need external permission, I'm giving it to you right now, whatever time and date you're watching this. It's okay to put yourself first. It's okay to make sure that you have what you need so that you can be there for other people and for animals and for whatever your cause. But we really need to embrace the fact that we have the right to set healthy boundaries. And you know what? We also have the responsibility because bad things happen when we don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it gets to that breaking point, right? Or we end up letting somebody down because we dropped a ball somewhere because we just couldn't juggle them all. Yes. There's so many things that can go wrong when we do this, but also knowing that we have been taught to do this right from day one. It's, letting go is not as easy as it sounds. And so putting yourself first, because of course that's something we've also been taught is selfish. Mm-hmm. Like we hear the buzzwords about, taking care of yourself isn't selfish. And, but the action behind it is people treat us differently if we don't do the thing. And all of that happens. So really they're just saying the words, but not actually standing behind it. So to be able to stand up for yourself and do the thing is really difficult. And so what do you tell women when or anyone, I'm going to use the word woman because that's who I work with, but everybody could use this, but I work with women. So what do you tell people when they were like, oh, I can't do that because, or yeah.
We have this worst case scenario in our heads, and I like to make a joke of it. We're afraid of being eaten. And it sounds ridiculous, of course. However, we're still operating off this like lizard brain from our past prehistoric selves. And we feel innately that if we are not there for others, if we don't do everything for other people, if we don't put ourselves last and put our tribe first, they're going to kick us out. And when we don't have the tribe, when we don't have the protection, someone watching our backs, well, then we get eaten by a passing, tiger. And there aren't too many like saber-toothed tigers wandering around these days that we have to worry about, but we still have that in our heads. Mm-hmm. So thinking about it, like when you go to set a boundary, when you say, I need time for me, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? You're not going to get eaten, probably. Can't guarantee it, but probably. And honestly, it usually isn't going to have this epic world-ending fallout that we're expecting. Are we going to upset somebody? It's possible. Are they going to live? Yes, they are. There's very few things in this world that we truly, truly have to do. And when when you do say no to somebody, when you do say, you know what, I need time for myself, or I'm not available to do that, or I just can't support you in that way right now, there's a really good chance that either they're going to find a way to do it themselves, they're going to find somebody else that can help them, or you know what, it didn't need to be done at all in the first place anyway.
Yeah.
So just manage those, the expectation of fallout.
Yeah. Because there will be, right?
Yeah.
There will be. Because as patterns change, people are like, they don't like the patterns to change. So
No,
they're
we
going
do
to
not
question
like
it. And they're not going to be on board. They may be even the ones that tell you not to do so much. But then when you don't do so much, they're like, wait, you're supposed to do not so much for others. You're supposed to still do for me. And yes, these are things that we see often. So, yeah.
I hear that all the time. Like, oh yeah, my wife really needs to learn how to set boundaries, but not with me, just with everybody else.
Yes. And it's sort of an all or nothing thing. Once you start, you want to set them everywhere. Absolutely. And so, one of the things that I do is help women build their businesses in and our beliefs around, how we show up and what we can do is a big part of that, right? Like our mindset, what we talk about. And the work that you do with women with people, setting boundaries and all of that is a big part of that, right? And as you shifted into having your own boundaries and then having your own business, what part of those boundary setting was important in having your own business?
Oh, so many things. So first I would say recognizing what I can and cannot do and what I do and do not want to do. Because as entrepreneurs, especially solopreneurs, especially in the beginning of our businesses, we're like, oh, you need me to do something that's even mildly adjacent to what I do. Yes, of course I can do that. I need the money. Obviously you're not going to say that to a client, but as you start to learn more about yourself and your business, but as you start to set boundaries, you realize that it's actually harmful to do that. And I was using this example earlier today. When I first started my content writing business, people would come to me, do you do this? Do you do this? Yeah, sure. It's all the English language words. Words are easy, sure. But people would come to me and they'd be like, hey, do you write grant applications? Yes, and I would say yes, but in my heart I'm going, oh, you don't know how to do that? That's a whole different beast. Like that's a different animal. And I learned very quickly that you're going to disappoint your client when you take on something that you truthfully have no business taking on, or when you try to learn another skill and you're not charging them enough for you to learn it, but you can't charge them for the learning process kind of thing. You're going to disappoint your client, but you're also going to ruin your reputation. Because now they're going to go to somebody and be like, oh, hey, I need a writer. Oh, yeah, no, I wouldn't recommend this one. She didn't do a great job.
Mm-hmm.
So really, instead of looking at it as I'm narrowing, I'm niching, niche. I've never been able to say that. Niching. Forget it.
Whatever it is for you.
However you say that word. Instead of it looking at it that way, and you're turning away business, you're protecting your future reputation, and you're actually doing a service to your clients by saying, I don't do that, but you know what? Maybe I know someone who does. Let me connect you. So I would say that's the first one. The second one is around pricing. And man, that is just the hardest. I don't know about you, but that is the hardest thing in my world and in many entrepreneurs' worlds, that you don't know your value. You're pricing yourself so low that one, you're damaging the market. Because now they're like, oh, hey, if I can get it this cheap, why are you charging this much to someone else? But really, you're not accounting for your time. And when you don't do that and you take on a project that you've only charged for 4 hours worth of work and it takes you 10, oh, number one, you're not doing a great job. And number two, you are resentful and you're pissed the whole time. And I've been there and I've done it, and it's not pretty. But luckily my husband, when we started dating, he's also a business coach, and he would walk by my office when we moved in together, just randomly and go, raise your prices, and keep going. And a few weeks later, raise your prices and keep going. And it actually improved my business. And I know people hear that and they're like, that's just BS. But it did, because I was able to focus more on my clients and when I was, serving them. And I was able to do a better job, and I wasn't resentful.
Yeah.
So
It's so true how that resentment creeps in, because you take these jobs out of this sense of lack, right? Like, oh, I need the money. I need the money. And then you end up resenting it. And then it's not helpful anyway, because everything, you're like, why am I even doing this? I am not making any money in this business, but all of those things.
Yeah.
And then not to mention your reputation and the work that you do, because that resentment does show up in your work, right? Because at a certain point you go, it's not worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And you stop even trying.
Yes. And I learned this term a couple of months ago, and I loved it. And it shows up in work, in our professional relationships, but it shows up in our personal too. And it's emotional leakage.
Mm.
And we think that we are controlled. We are holding everything in. We're like, it doesn't bother me. I'll let it, just roll off my back. But your face saying something different.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. So you've written 7 books.
I've written 6 books, 1 coloring book, and then I've ghostwritten 6 books and book coached. So yeah, I'm a fan of the words.
I have a couple of books out there, but wow. How to Say No. Sorry, the book, what I had the title right here, and I erased it. Yes, there we go. Yeah, that's the one.
I shall then write it for you. Yes, you had me at no.
You had me at no. That's it. Yeah. And can you tell us a little bit about that book? Because I think that feels like something every woman I know needs.
Yeah. So while I was going through this great awakening, if you will, in this journey, I took on something I shouldn't have taken on. And after consulting with mentors and friends and all of that, I realized on an airplane, that I needed to get out of it, that I was not going to be doing anyone a favor by taking on this responsibility. And I was like, hey, you know what? I should probably write a book about this, because that's how I do. That's how I roll. And I outlined probably 60% of the book sitting on an airplane. My Kindle died. And I was like, oh, I'm stuck with my own thoughts. How terrifying. But I started outlining this, and it really became my journey, and how I learned boundaries, along with how other people can. And the permission aspect is huge. But I kind of go through, first we need to understand why we don't set boundaries and why we haven't in the past. And then we need to learn how to decide, what is it that we actually want out of life? Because we have a really bad habit of not setting our own priorities. So other people's, I call them OPP, other people's priorities, they overtake it. Mm-hmm. So how do we kind of figure out what we want and then build boundaries around it? And the last part is how to communicate them. Because again, setting healthy boundaries in your head and in your heart, and then communicating them to another human being, 2 different things. And we need to be like, yeah, I got a boundary. And then you actually have to tell someone else, and that's where things fall apart. So, the book is really a how-to guide. The biggest compliment that I accept, I don't even know how to put that. I get a lot of compliments around the book, but the one that I take to heart most is that it feels like you're sitting there having a conversation with somebody. 'Cause
Yeah.
I don't like boring books and I don't like being talked at. So, so that was kind of the goal for this. I will say, or caution or warn or whatever you want to say. There's exercises in the book. There's work to be done. I was talking to a coach a couple of months ago. She was in a networking group, and the question was, have you written a book? And I said, I have. Does anybody have any questions? Can I help you? And one of the women was like, yeah, there's just so many self-help books out there, and I've read so many and they don't help. And I was like, all right, I'm just gonna be blunt because that's how I am. But did you do the work, or did you just read the book and expect that it would like hit you by osmosis? And she got the look on her face, and I was like, okay, well, that's why. So look, are you going to get something out of reading it? Yes. Are you going to get more out of reading it and actually doing the work? A lot more.
A lot more. Yeah, I love that. That's such a good point, because it's true. I know so many people who read all the books, and and that's where it stops.
Yep.
And then I know other people who read the books and do the work, and you can see the difference. Absolutely. Yeah. And often we pick up those books because there's something that we know that we need that. And then we get into it and it's like, well, yeah, this is good enough. Yeah, I've learned a lot. But you don't really want to dig into it because it's going to, change everything. It's going to change everything. But yeah. Oh, we could go on a whole thing about writing books, but yes, or, using the books that
Yes, exactly.
I don't have the book link below, but I will make sure to do that afterwards. Yes, absolutely wonderful. And then along that line, you have a gift, your How to Say No cheat sheet. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? The link is below.
As I said, the hardest part of setting boundaries is actually talking to somebody else about them. And that's why I wanted to create a resource for people to get that conversation started, because we are not used to like forming the words to have these conversations. And it can be really scary if you go in not knowing, how to handle this. So yeah, I have clients that they print it out. It's a How to Say No cheat sheet. They print it out, they laminate it, and they stick it to their wall. And when somebody comes in and asks them something, they're like, hold on. So yeah, it's really just a resource to get you comfortable and to get you prompted so that you can come up with your own verbiage. Obviously, this is mine. But yeah.
Oh, I love that. I think it would be very helpful to those who need it. One of the things that I found is I started to set boundaries, and I was really good at setting boundaries with other people, but it took me a lot longer to set them with myself.
Yeah.
Right? The stories we tell ourselves. Have you noticed is that just me?
No. I screwed up today. So literally tomorrow, my email list will be getting an email that says, hey, there's no blog for this week because I screwed up my schedule. So I'm still on the journey, folks. Still on the journey. It's very hard to set those boundaries with yourself, especially like when you think about like immediate gratification is awesome. There was like a research study where they gave kids like a marshmallow, and they like put a marshmallow on the desk, and they're like, you can have this now, or you can have 2 in 20 minutes. And like almost every kid ate the marshmallow. Like we are, especially in this day and age, we are used to immediate gratification. Do something, get the dopamine hit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really hard to sit back and say, okay, this might feel good in the moment. Packing the schedule, eating the cake, whatever it may be. This may feel really good in the moment, but it's not going to lead to my long-term success. It's not going to get me closer to my long-term goals. Yeah, it's hard. I It's hard. Um, like I said, screwed it up today. But ultimately, we do have to set those boundaries with ourselves, because if we don't respect our own boundaries, why would we expect anybody else to?
Yeah.
So I will say there's this cool tip that I learned about, and I think it's good for it's good for eating, but it's also kind of like a life lesson. My friend had gone to Weight Watchers or whatever it's called now, and the instructor said, like, by the way, when you're full, you sigh. And yeah, my friend was like, maybe you do, but I don't. And, she went home a couple of days later, she's eating and she's like, oh my goodness, she's like, I have it. And she's telling me about this. And I'm going, okay, good for you. I don't have that. And then one day I'm eating and I sighed and I was like, ew. So I say this to say that we have this internal system that knows things well before they ever hit our head. And if you learn to tap into your body and your, I call it your tell, it's like a poker tell. When it comes to boundaries with others, when it comes to boundaries with yourself, there's something that you do or something that you feel, tightness in your throat, clenching in the chest or the stomach, rolling your eyes when somebody's calling all the time. Like, there's something that if you cue into it, you can figure out, like, oh, wait, this is what I actually want to do, should be doing, shouldn't be doing. And you just kind of have to be quiet a little bit and figure out what that is. And then going forward, it's much easier.
Yes. It's so good about the signs, right? About those internal signs that we have. I talk a lot about intuition and, our internal messaging and all of that. And it is such an important part because we are so tuned out, right? Everything's external and we don't pay any attention. And again, it's something we're taught. We're taught to ignore it all. Somebody else has the answer. Somebody else knows better than us. And so learning to tune back in can be work, but once you do, it gets easier and easier, right? Yeah. And one of the things that finally sort of switched it for me was why would you expect anybody else to believe you if you don't believe yourself? Like, you're lying to yourself on a regular basis by not following these things that you say you're going to do. Be truthful with yourself, and then it's easier with other things. But yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to thank you so much. Where can people find you?
So SherylGreenSpeaks.com is my website. It's Sheryl with an S. You can get everything on there, but I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, Instagram when I remember. And I do have a weekly newsletter that goes out called Boundary Bites. And so every Wednesday except the next one, you get a helpful boundary tip from me. My books are on Amazon. There's the book and a coloring book to go with it, because who doesn't like to color? And other than that, I think just shine a puppy light into the sky and I'll come running. It's fine. So.
I love it. We do have your links below. I am going to grab the book links and I'll put those as well. But the link for your cheat sheet is there already. Your website, everything's there already. Is there any final thoughts before we go, or anything that we didn't share you'd like to?
Just a reminder that you have the right and the responsibility to set healthy boundaries. And if you don't take care of yourself, you're not going to be here to take care of anybody else.
Yeah, so true. So true. Well, I want to thank you again so much for being here. Thank you, Sheryl. Are you a woman interested in aligning your heart-centered business with your ethics, values, and life goals? Join our Aligned Business Building Mastermind for accountability, like-minded women who become your business colleagues to share your journey with, resources and trainings, and so much more. Join us for 1 month free using the link below. Thank you, and we'll see you next time on the Aligned Ambition Show.